already have Sister Radha with us. So thank you so much. Welcome once again. And she's joining us with us today from Gyan Sarovar. So before I give to you, I'll just again introduce Radha sister. I met her while I was in Rome, pre-COVID 2019. And I must say, I asked her for the biodata, such a humble soul, just a few lines. And I just have to say that because there's nothing much she sent to me. But she is a meditation teacher based in Rome. And she was introduced to Raj Yoga in childhood in India, where she grew up. She deepened her practice in the UK and subsequently in Italy, where she currently coordinates the activities of the BK Center there. And she also is a working professional, unlike in India, where the surrendered sisters usually don't work, but she's still working at a Rome-based UN agency, United Nations agency. Let me just again say a few lines for her. So today we have with us Sister Radha, who serves the city of Rome. But today she joins from Madhuban, which is indeed everyone's home, right? Her talks provide solace to wandering minds which have got used to roam. R-O-A-M, that roam, the minds are wandering. And her personality transforms all as if moving from hard rock towards soft foam. Everyone likes the soft foam, right? She stands strong with spirituality as her mighty dome and adds color to the soul's existing inner chrome. Divinity exists in her core like the DNA of a genome that makes her stage so stable as if being seated on a throne. And lastly, she's indeed so light, you'll experience that when she starts speaking, as if in the stage of always being flown. She's in the flying stage. And through her virtuous behavior, radiates the divine cologne. So with this, thank you so much for your presence. And we are really eager to listen to your sharings. The stage is all yours. Thanks.
Om Shanti. And thank you very much, Manoj Bhai, for this very beautiful poetry and expression of your love and really of your enthusiasm for these wonderful programs. I was listening to some of just in the middle really of the workshop, and it's really very inspiring to see how everyone is together, studying together, going deeper, really with this deep interest to bring this into our everyday lives and therefore bring about transformation in our families, in ourselves, in our families, and in the world. And so really congratulations to everyone for the work already done. Really. So this subject of divinity, when I first received this topic, I thought, well, I haven't really actually gone into the details of what is divyata, divinity, because this word comes up more in Hindi. It doesn't come up that much in English as a virtue. We often talk about divyata in Hindi. So it's really a question, actually, that is this virtue just for the gods? Or is this also something that we as human beings can also work towards? That it's very easy to, or maybe it's more common that we think about, yes, I'm working on tolerance, I'm working on patience, such qualities, but to say I'm working on divinity, is quite unusual, really. And so usually we don't think about this virtue as being something humanly possible. And so it's quite incredible and interesting to think, well, why would we be talking about it if it's not humanly possible? surely this virtue, this word actually comes up within our spiritual study quite a lot. Whether we talk about divine virtues, we talk about divine intellect, divine family, divine vision. And so we have vision, we have family, we have intellect, we have virtues. But what is it that makes them divine? Why do we add that word divine before these aspects? Family, vision, intellect, virtues. So actually, it's interesting also to think about that. If you were surrounded by divine family, divinity, what would it be like for you, for each one of us, to be surrounded by what is our idea of divinity? What would it feel like? What would be the experience of everyday life? And it's interesting to think about, because in fact, the reality is, through the spiritual study, that is exactly what we're aiming to create. And so I think that a lot of the things that have come up in your workshop, and the ideas and the determined thought for your practice, I think there's a lot of very, very powerful and very useful aspects in there. And so maybe some of the things that I will be sharing might be shall we say, a repetition or an emphasis on what has already come up. So, but these are some thoughts that came to me and that I find interesting. And so, I, as Manoj Bhai said, I'm in Mount Abu in Madhuban. And one of the things that I really love to notice is the dawn, So especially being in Gyan Sarovar, it's something that is very attractive, the sunrise is around 7:10, 7:15, something like that. However, the first light comes at least 45 minutes before that. And I've noticed that when that first light comes, it has a very magical element to it. And before that light appears, there's darkness. If you didn't know the time, if you had, you didn't have a clock or even a body clock, you wouldn't know that the first light was going to come, because there's darkness all around. So why would there be light? And why I'm saying this, why I'm telling you this, is because sometimes, thinking of divinity can feel quite distant and quite removed from today's world. Because where is the divinity in today's world? We might use the word, we might think about it, but actually every day, it's what if we don't create it, it's not there. And so therefore, the first thing is to know that that light, even just the thought, the word, and the action that is based on divinity, is like the very first light of the dawn, maybe even before it's come. And when there's just a little bit of light, it takes some time before the day breaks, before the sun rises. And so it takes some time to actually re-emerge all the characteristics of our original divinity. And so I really like this image of, yes, the first light of the dawn, but it's announcing the day, actually. And the day has been through the night. The day has passed through. So when you reach the day, you have passed through the night. And so this understanding that no matter how extreme, shall we say, whatever's the opposite of divinity, whether it's violence or what sometimes, we say devilish or evil or very negative experiences and behavior, which is like the night, the ignorance, that is going to be transformed into something so completely opposite. And just the realization, actually, we need to realize the depth of darkness before we can appreciate the brilliance of the day. And so whether that's recognizing what's happening all around us, or recognizing what actually also goes on within, that we as spiritual beings have been through and hopefully are at the tail end of the very dark night. And the dark night of sorrow, of causing sorrow, of taking suffering, etc., etc. And so to recognize that and to acknowledge that we have come through that, and we are moving towards the brilliance of the day. And the brilliance of the day is a symbol of divinity, of our natural divinity. So as we know, there is this saying that God made us in his own image. This is something that probably we've all heard of. And as we call God a divine being, there's no doubt about that, right? So there might be a doubt about whether we are divine beings, but there's no doubt that God is a divine being. And so if we are created in God's image, it means that we naturally have the characteristics of divinity embedded within us, innately within us. And so it's like this first awareness really comes back to this question of who am I? That I am that being who is, yes, the child of the divine, and therefore I am the being who carries the natural qualities, or who naturally carries the qualities, the characteristics of divinity. So as Asha Didi had mentioned in her talk, and in fact, as we saw, the whole thing was really the connection between spirituality and divinity. So of course, what we need is the practice of spirituality. So spirituality is like the journey, and divinity is like the destination. But we need to be able to see the destination. We need to have that clear in our minds and in our hearts and in our experiences. We need to have a taste of what it really is to be a divine being. So we need to have seen our own complete form, our own divine form, really. Because maybe we're quite familiar with that form of, the human form, or maybe even sometimes less than human form, or more than human in the egoistic sense. But we need to have that, sometimes we call it our aim. So to have that clear for us, that this is who I am, this is who I was, and this is who I will be. You know, this very beautiful saying of hum so hum. You know, as I was, so I will be. And so to make that firm within the self, that this is who I am, you know, because I am the child of the divine being. And so therefore, the practice of spirituality is what will take us to our destination. And so therefore, the characteristics of divinity sound like the destination, you know, sound like the top, you know, where you reach your goal. And so if you think, well, you know, that's my aim, sometimes it can feel like a little bit too much. And that's why we have the practice of spirituality, which breaks things down a little bit, you know, and says, okay, there's this step, then this step, then this step. And then you reach the characteristic of divinity. So I wanted to share with you 3 specific characteristics, which I think you have probably come out in your workshop already, but anyway, I will share them. And so the first one is equanimity. You know? So to be able to have that absolute ability to be the same inside, in praise, in defamation, in hot and cold, in abundance and in scarcity, in praise and criticism, to neither be impressed nor unimpressed by anything. And this condition of equanimity is not one where we don't feel anything. So remembering that when we reach the day, we've been through the night. So the condition of equanimity is where we know both conditions, we know both extremes, but we're still not disturbed by them. And in order to reach that, of course, we need to practice, and we need to notice how close or how far we are from this condition or this characteristic of equanimity. When they say that the coolness, the coolness of the yogi is in fact that complete balance. And then the other one, the other characteristics is the constants. And someone, I think, talked about stability. So the ability to be constant in our practice, constant in our state of consciousness. So constant in our vision. For example, one of the characteristics that I loved and admired in Dadi Janki was really her ability to have that constant vision of hope and enthusiasm in each person. And there was never a time when I experienced it. I never heard anyone say, well, this person, forget them, there's no write them off, for example. So she had constants in her vision of upliftment for each one. And so the question for the self is, in which area of my life can I would benefit from having constants? So is it in my practice of meditation? Is it in the job that I'm doing? Is it in the quality of interaction that I have with people? Is it in a certain habit, a good habit, a positive habit that I would like to develop? Is there constance in the sense of like a determination in my thinking, maybe the constance in seeing things in a deep way rather than just in a superficial way, for example. So the first one was equanimity, and then the second one is constance, and the third one is illuminated. So this is definitely a characteristic of divinity, where there is that light of power and the light of lightness. So there's not that sense of burden or heaviness or weight, even though there might be responsibility and there might be many tasks, many things to take care of, and yet the condition of being illuminated, of being light and enlightened. And so this is something that be interesting for each one to think, do you have examples of people whom you would consider divine in your life? And because it's important to have, sometimes it's important to have role models, and then of course we each do it in our own unique way. So it's not like we have to copy someone, but just as for children, it's so important to have role models, whether it's in the parents or teachers or other authority figures, role models of people who, embody behaviors and characteristics that will serve the child when they grow up. And so, of course, when I think of someone whom I see as light, as illuminated, I think of Dadi Prakashmani, actually, and many of you might have known her. She was one of the chiefs of the Brahma Kumaris for many years, and responsible for the vast expansion of the spiritual university. However, if people would often ask her, so how do you manage to stay so light even when you have so much responsibility? And she would say, well, I'm just a trustee and it's God's work and he gets it done. And so it was really an example, actually, to have seen with our own eyes, of someone who really was able to be in that condition of being illuminated. And so literally that sense of brightness around. And so just thinking about it, that when we're on a journey, on the spiritual journey, really, the aim is not to be spiritual. That's the practice. But the aim is to be divine. And so I was thinking that there are, I've chosen 3 specific aspects of how that divinity can be expressed. Because we need to know what to practice. If we're going towards divinity, then what do I have to practice, really, in order to become divine, in order to allow the divine to re-emerge within me, or as was mentioned earlier, to invoke the divine within. And so the first one is this thing that we call divine vision. Which is not about having visions and sakshatkar and not in the sense of being having a flash and suddenly you see a divine being. No, but it's actually about how I see things. So we all have 2 eyes, and we see things that are close, we see things at a distance. whatever we see with our physical eyes, we then interpret. However, the vision really is based on what is my consciousness. So where is my consciousness? Where does that go? When I see a person, when I see another human being, what's the first thing I notice in them? And it's interesting to check the self, to say, well, okay, as I'm walking around, like here in Madhuban, in Mount Abu, at the moment, there are maybe 400, 500 people from all over the world. And of course, in the place where I'm staying, and then in other campuses, there are many, many more, or there will be many more. And so it's been, a good practice really to say, okay, whenever I see people, maybe I know them or I don't know them, what am I noticing? Yes, with my physical eyes, but what am I noticing with the eye of my consciousness, with my third eye, which is really the one that has the divine vision. So we can't see anything on a physical level with our third eye, but that is like our consciousness, the seat of our consciousness. Where am I positioned when I meet someone, maybe with whom I've had an argument with, or who has done something unpleasant or upsetting? When I see someone or something, that when I go to a place, maybe where I've had a bad experience, what is my attitude towards that? Which will then filter into my vision. And so what we call the practice of soul conscious vision is like the practice, of divine vision, where before I can be able to see others as spiritual beings, I first need to see myself as a spiritual being. You can try it out. You can try as much as you like to see other people as souls. But if you are not aware of yourself first as a soul, you will get distracted by the color of their skin, how they've done their hair, what they're wearing, how tall or fat or thin they are, or how they've changed from the last time you saw them. And so it's very easy to get distracted, and that's why it's a practice. When you keep having the opportunity to practice, it's a good thing. So that's where we become, practice makes perfect. And so it's a good question to ask the self, that what do I notice when I meet people, when I first start a task? What do I notice? What do I observe? And so this practice of divine vision, of having divine vision, is something that's very, very important. And then the second thing is what we call the divine intellect. So when we come onto this particular spiritual path, which is what I'm familiar with, one of the things that that is recommended that we practice is what we call purity in our relationships, purity in our interactions. So that, yes, there is this vision of brotherhood, that I as a soul am, a child of God. And so therefore each other being is also a child of God, and therefore my brother or sister. So to have that vision. But as we, in a sense, we start off on this spiritual path, it's as if we receive a gift, from the Supreme as our teacher. And that gift is what he calls as the divine intellect, which is like the ability to understand the spiritual knowledge. Because in order to understand, in order to hold the spiritual knowledge within our intellect, within our mind, even within our memory, it's not just that easy. We might have it all available, all on the internet, all on our telephones. We might have 100 classes and listen to them, but to actually hold it, to be able to carry it, even just to be able to remember it, can sometimes take a lot of work, right? Can it take a lot of attention? And so we receive this gift of the divine intellect, which is the ability to discern, the ability to see that which is not visible with these physical eyes. And I'm not talking about esoteric things, I'm talking about spiritual understandings and spiritual wisdom. So we're able to see into the depth of something and understand it and be able to interpret it in such a way that we can see the relevance of it in our lives. We can see, how can I put that into practice? How is that idea, that concept of spiritual knowledge actually useful to me? So, in my experience, as a child, I had the fortune of growing up with this spiritual knowledge all around me, And when I was about 13, my father passed away. And I remember in that moment, I was studying away from my home. I was in another school, residential school. And when I came home and I saw my mother, and I saw how she had already been practicing this for about 10 years before that. And I saw how she was so strong and so stable. And she looked like a goddess to me, actually, at that time. And I'd never seen her like that. And then I saw the body, and I said, this is not my father. My father has gone, and I couldn't even go close to the body because it was so clear to me that the soul had left the body. And it was the soul that played the part of my father when he was in that body. And so, of course, after that, you realize what's going on. And then all the, after a long time, then the emotions come up and you have to deal with that. But it was very, very useful and very powerful to be able to have received that knowledge, that spiritual knowledge already before that moment, to be able to have applied that in that moment and understood what was going on. And so that, is maybe a rather extreme and unfortunate, shall we say, incident to have shared. But basically, this practice of using the spiritual knowledge through our intellect is what will then eventually make our intellect actually divine. And so the gift that we receive from the Supreme, from the divine being, is it's like a tool, like an instrument that we need to learn how to use. So you might have a wonderful telephone, but if you don't know how to use it, you really can't, it's even more frustrating. So you have to learn how to use it. And so we need patience. We need to be able to take the time. We need to be able to study in depth, learn. And this is what came up here recently as well, that we need to be our own teacher. And so to use this gift that we've received of the divine intellect, which comes when you are on the spiritual path. And then the last thing that, regarding the expression of divinity. So the first way that we can express our divinity or practice it really is through our vision. So through having our divine vision, bringing divinity within our vision. The second is to learn how to use our intellect in a divine way. So to use our divine intellect. And then the third one is the divine vibrations. So this is something, is that when one is in the consciousness of the true self, when I'm aware that I am a child of God, and even though there might be difficult situations around me, even though there might be turbulence inside, the truth is that I am the child of the divine. That is the bottom line. So there's nothing that will change that. So even if everything shakes up all around, I can come back to that truth. And that is the stability. So when I'm in that consciousness of my true self, then very naturally the vibrations that radiate from the self will be divine. They can't be anything else. And so this is an expression, the expression of divinity through our being. When we are connected in yoga with the Supreme, and that connection, so it's like you plug in, to the socket and you switch on, and what happens is that there's the flow of the current, and that current will then illuminate or will, make the kettle boil or do whatever it's supposed to do. And so in the same way that when we plug in to the Supreme and we have switched on, so you have to remember to switch on the consciousness, then the energy will flow into us and will naturally radiate. And so I think it's probably the experience of many people who are on this spiritual path, is that people whom you work with, or people whom, it maybe takes a little bit longer for people whom you live with, because they see all the things behind the curtains, but maybe people whom you interact with will notice the vibrations. And maybe people whom you live with will notice the change in you. And so the divine vibrations are something that naturally radiate from us when we are in that consciousness, when we are connected in yoga with the Supreme. And so we can practice this in order to make our life more naturally blissful. And so then, of course, there is the question, so what comes in the way of the expression of this divinity? Why is, if it's something so natural, if we've been created in that way, then why can't we just do it? Why is the world, what comes in the way of that? Even on the spiritual path, there is a lot of resistance, right? If it was all easy, then we would all be peaceful, loving, happy, divine beings all the time, and we probably wouldn't have to have these workshops. So what is it that comes in the way? And this is a question that each one of us can ask ourselves, really. What is it that comes that becomes like a filter or a wall between me and my ability to express the divinity that's within, whether it's through vibrations, through the divine vision or the divine intellect. And so I've identified a few things, and you can identify your own as well. But one of them is the doubts in the self, the thoughts that bring the self-respect down, the thoughts that, or the consciousness that makes me distant from the awareness that I am the child of the divine. So what are those thoughts? That is what I have to identify. That is what I have to notice. Because as soon as you notice something, it's like even a physical, but a spiritual law. Once you notice it, it doesn't have the same control over you. And so half the battle is won there. So just notice, what are those thoughts that are making you doubt yourself? And to not give them energy, to come back to that one basic truth. I am the child of the divine. And therefore, divinity is my natural nature. So that's one thing, is to notice what are the doubts and to make sure that I re-stabilize myself in my self-respect. Probably we've all had experiences, where people have criticized us or told us nasty things that make us say, well, if we give importance to public opinion and what other people say, we might think, well, maybe I am like that, and we maybe believe them, even though we know better. And so to notice, what am I believing? Sometimes if we get shaken up by something that someone says, it's because I actually believe what they're saying. And so we need to be careful about that those things then work as doubts over us and take control really over our thinking. And that's what weakens us. So then we come back, and so that will happen. That's the reality, because that's the practice. So then the second thing is basically the mistaken understanding of ourselves. And this mistaken understanding is actually quite deep, and it's very much connected with, of course, our upbringing, our conditioning, the deep beliefs that we have about ourselves. So this can be, shall we say, come in the way of our expression and our practice of divinity. Because we might think, well, I'm no good, there's something wrong in everything that I do. Or we might go the opposite way and say, well, there's no one better than me, so I don't need to make any effort. And so to notice the mistaken understanding of the self. Often what I've noticed is that often within interactions, we are asserting our identity in one way or another. We may, if something is important, if it's important, where do I come from? I remember when I first left India when I was about 18 years old, and I first came back to India, everyone started to see me as a foreigner. And I'd lived 18 years of my life in India. And it was a complete shock to me, because I felt, well, but India is my home. I'm from India. Why are you seeing me as a foreigner? And that was a very strong lesson for me to say, well, you know what? You're neither Indian, nor are you a foreigner. You are a spiritual divine being. And it really doesn't matter if someone sees you like this or like that. No. And so now I'm happy, however anyone sees me, it really doesn't matter. But what I've noticed is that in one form or another, whatever is important to us, we assert our identity, whether it's in our job or even in our qualities, in what we've done, what we've achieved. And sometimes we try to kind of tell people about that, in one form or another. Yes, I did that. Yes, I know that as well. And so it's useful to observe the self and say, what identity am I asserting? Am I emphasizing? And then therefore to come back. So to not let that be an obstacle, to not let a mistaken identity be an obstacle in the expression of our divinity. And so just really to conclude, because I think we're going to have a meditation as well, is to say, well, what further practice, and maybe I'll just share one or two things that are helping me to maintain the practice, the spiritual practice, with the aim of returning to that divine condition. And so the first thing really is to get close to God, because we're colored by our company. And so the more time and energy and companionship we have with the divine, of course, the more that's going to, rub off on us, and our own divinity will wake up. And so to let God be my mother, to let God be my father, my teacher, my friend, my companion, my guide, just to let God wake me up, let God, walk with me, talk with me, eat with me, and so to enjoy the company of the divine, and to really notice, what does it feel like to be in the company of the divine as I'm living my human life? This is the only time that we can actually experience that. When we actually become divine beings, then God goes home, his job is done, and we enjoy being divine beings, without remembering anything. So that's one thing. And the other thing is to really have the balance between being kind and being determined with ourselves. So things will come up, there will be turbulence, there will be moments of confusion and chaos within, externally, but to find the time to write, to sit with the self, to take care of the self, to connect with people with whom you trust, and to have conversations that are interesting and will deepen your spiritual understanding, to be open to learn, and I think this is definitely a characteristic of everyone present here, So just really wanted to conclude with that, and maybe with one little story about one thing I noticed with Dadi Janki is, the other day we were watching a recording actually, in which she came up just for a moment, and she was accepting something from another person, and just the way she accepted it, it was as if her state of mind was completely transparent. The love, the grace, the deep sense of bhavna, that loving feeling, was completely clear on her face and in how she accepted it. And so it's not, we don't have to do big things to be divine, but it's in little things. that that energy of divinity will radiate, it will emanate. So I'm going to stop here, and I hope that's the right time. Manoj Bhai, you can tell me. And so
Sure, it's absolutely everything is perfect and divine, no problems. So we'll just take one question in the interest of time. Uh, the sister is asking, I'm a Christian by faith. She's a Christian. And whenever you all speak about divinity at Brahma Kumaris, it's all the deities which are shown, which takes us towards the Hindu religion very commonly. Like all these are Hindus sort of thought that way. So I'm not able to, she's saying, I'm not able to relate. I am a Christian. Can I really become divine? So is it possible that divinity is Hinduism or something?
well, I mean, my understanding is that no matter which religion someone belongs to, but as a spiritual being, as a child of God, that divinity is there. And it's just a question of finding the way to actually live it and bring it out into our everyday life. Now, for some people, the symbolism are Lakshmi and Narayan are the deities. But of course, that's not that for everyone. You know, it can't be. And because it is something that, you know, it needs to be something that is meaningful for you. And so that's why I was talking about role models, you know. So even when we think about Lakshmi and Narayan, it's still an image, really. And those who see that image give meaning to it, and therefore that has a significance for them. But if you don't give meaning to it, even if maybe you come from a Hindu background, it won't have any significance, you know. And so I think the important thing, whatever religion you come from, is to find what is your role model for divinity, what embodies divinity for you. There are many people, many Brahma Kumaris, Kumars and Kumaris outside India who do not very easily relate to Lakshmi and Narayan. You know? And so for them, it's better actually to say, well, what is divinity? What form would that take? You know? And so each one needs to find that for themselves. So absolutely, it's possible for everyone.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Beautiful answer. Very apt. So I would now request Dr. Ashok Mehta. Our seniors are there with us, and Sister Claudia. So both of you can propose a vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Radha Ben. We enjoyed your, I would say, a different way of putting divinity. I think you're exuberant in your divinity, even by watching you, not only at the physical level, but at the level at which you're speaking through the heart to all of us. Whatever you have said, everything has a lot of significance, a lot of meaning in our own lives. And what you have done is you have expressed it very vividly. As a matter of fact, when you talked about your personal life, your pronunciations are like Indians. You said you lived in India for a long time, and therefore I think whatever you have said is more Indian than what you live in Europe now. But I think you look, you sound more Indian than Indian itself. Thank you very much for bringing in a lot of different way of putting the things about divinity and spirituality. I think we are all in the same mode, looking at divinity in a different way and expressing in a different way in our own life. And we've really enjoyed your thoughts. Thank you very much. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, sister. It's very nice to see you, actually, for the first time. And I quite like when you spoke about the characteristics of divinity. And that is quite a very nice deep points for us to see. And also the how to practice to become divine. I myself, I am from the Christian religion. And I like also to say that in Christianity, we can see many models too that we can see and practice, like the Virgin Mary, the one that also the one who helps all of them. So different ways of divinity. So we can see as a model too. And so doesn't matter if we come from a Christian or Hindu background, like you said, we all can see our divinity in some way or the other one and see our points. I myself, I see sometimes what the devotees look for this divine being. Then I check to see if I have those virtues or not. So we can do this kind of workout with us, even if it's not Lakshmi Narayan, but we still always can find. Thank you very much. You explained very nicely. Thank you.
Thank you, both of you. And before I pass on to the meditation to Sister Radha, I'll just share the screen and make the announcements. So as we move from divinity to truthfulness, all of us at BKs are very fond of this month of February. I'm sure you know why, because the Mahashivratri is just around the corner in the next week. So we move our focus now to truthfulness, which is in Hindi, we call it Sachai Safai. So let's come to India, because, you know, even Shiva, we say the incorporeal Shiva likes the land of Bharat, India. So we have a very new speakers, and all of you all wanted in the format of a dialogue or a conversation as a spiritual chit chat. So we have our very two senior sisters, Shushma Didi, who is the Jaipur Museum subzone in charge. She's also one of the managing committee members at BKs. And along with her, her very close friend and close contact, Sister Chandrakala, who is also the director of the Raj Yoga Retreat Center there in Jaipur. So they will be guiding and telling us a lot about what is this value of truthfulness. So it will be the next Saturday, as always, same time, 8:30 p.m. India time. And following that, the workshop we have with us, our very dear brother, Dr. Sachin Parab. I think many people in India know him. He's the joint secretary of the medical wing of our Raj Yoga Education and Research Foundation. Incidentally, it's a divine coincidence, I must say. His name is Sachin. Sach means truth. And there you go. So he's speaking all about the inside truth, which he'll tell us after 2 weeks from now. And as always, at the end of the month, we have a silence retreat on the same value, truthfulness. That's on Sunday. So please keep your time free. It will be morning times for India and late evenings for West Coast. And this is an elegant calendar, always thanks to Sister Kosha, who makes it for us. And we always send it, even our WhatsApp group has this as a display picture to let you know our programs which are coming. These are our websites, the Vancouver being vancouver.brahmakumaris.ca and the Vihasa is vihasa.in. You can please feel free to send all your feedbacks, comments, suggestions on our emails. And yeah, many people keep asking for recordings. So they are very well recorded. The workshops can be found on omshanti.tk/workshops. And the episodes by the senior Rajyogis are on omshanti.tk/playlist and /English. So with this, I'll just stop sharing the screen. And I think Anu sister, if you can just quickly, because people ask for the photograph, and then we'll go in the meditation mode.
Yeah, definitely. We'll love to have the photograph and have this memory of having Sister Radha. It was really beautiful, Sister Radha, to experience the simplicity, beauty of divinity through being you naturally. So everyone, whoever like to be in the photograph, please switch on your video. I'll just take one more. I got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So over to Sister Radha for the meditation. I'll play some soft music in the background as well. That's okay.
So we do the meditation for Tell me how long again, please?
So next 5 to 7 minutes is okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so finding that comfortable position, taking a deep breath, just adjusting the body first of all. And then also finding the position inside. We've heard many things, thinking about many, many aspects. And now, let all of those ideas settle within the mind. It's as if the screen of my mind becomes clear. All the writing, all the images, move to a different place. And my mind is calm and clear. I feel settled inside. And the natural energy of peace rises up into my consciousness. And I generate one powerful thought. I am a child of the divine. This is who I am. This is who I was. And this is who I will be through eternity. My journey may take me through many different terrain and scenes. But I always come back to this one stable, constant awareness. And this one thought, I am a child of the divine, naturally connects me to that being. And I find myself in the sweet, powerful company of the most beautiful divine being. And the vibrations that radiate and surround me activate my natural, original divinity. It is this energy that will flow into my actions and interactions. It will flow through my vision, into my decisions, my every step, and every movement. I feel the gratitude. And I want to return and be in the company of the divine as often as I can. So once again, I take a deep breath. And very gently, I guide my attention to how my body feels, how I am feeling, and then to my physical surroundings. Om Shanti.
Thank you so much once again, Sister Radha. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you.